Now, the DA, AfriForum and the Helen Suzman Foundation are challenging Jacob Zuma's medical parole. Their application is being heard by the High Court in Pretoria. They want the parole reviewed and set aside. Zuma was granted medical parole in September for his 2-year contempt of court sentence. And eNCA's Barry Bateman has been following matters in court for us, and he joins us now live. Barry, the court has heard from Arthur Fraser and what he based his decision on regarding this parole. What did he say? Tell us a bit more.
Well, what we were referring to here is not so much the Arthur Fraser's decision, sorry, Maseko, but rather whether he was allowed to make that particular decision, and that is central to it. We had heard about how the parole board or the medical advisory board had looked at all the available facts and come to the conclusion that former President Jacob Zuma did not qualify for medical parole in terms of Section 79 of the Correctional Services Act. Now, that particular provision requires that the person making the application, in order to qualify for this parole, must either have a terminal illness or be incapacitated in such a way that they can no longer stay behind in prison. So that particular decision and how it was reached is central to this application of irrationality, is the one aspect that Arthur Fraser does not have the capacity, he's not a medical professional, to make this particular decision, and he rejected the decision of the medical parole board, but then also the question of legality, of whether or not he is in fact empowered by law to actually make that. But it was the advocate Ishmael Jamie who was addressing this particular aspect. Take a listen to what he had to say.
And we assert and submit that the A requirement, terminal disease or physical incapacity, can only be decided and determined by a doctor, a medical practitioner. The functionary who acted in this matter, Mr. Fraser, who was the National Commissioner at the time, on the papers, not in dispute, is not a medical practitioner. He has no medical knowledge, expertise. He's not in a position to make that decision as to whether any particular inmate is suffering from a terminal disease or condition or is physically incapacitated in the manner required by the sections. The decision of the Medical Parole Board is to be found at para 20 of our heads, Justice, and it says not recommended based on the following. The board appreciates the assistance from all specialists with provision of the requested reports. They had all the reports. The board also notes and appreciates the use of aliases and has treated all submitted reports as those pertaining to the applicant. From the information received, the applicant suffers from multiple comorbidities. His treatment has been optimized and all conditions have been brought under control. From the available information in the reports, the conclusion reached by the board is that the applicant is stable and does not qualify for medical parole according to the Act. That was a final, definitive conclusion with all the facts at its disposal.
Now, Arthur Fraser, I keep saying Fraser because I'm trying to stay away from the Fraser, but Arthur Fraser was National Commissioner at the time, Barry. How has he defended his decision?
Well, it comes down to, again, that question of legality and where his authority lies in relation to the authority of the parole board. The submission from Arthur Fraser's counsel is that it was all about discretion, that the parole board has a function in itself, but the National Commissioner is empowered by law, and it's correct. There are certain aspects of the Section 79 where the National Commissioner will play a specific role. The contention from the DA and the other parties is that on that decision related to a medical matter, that should be left to the doctors. There are other aspects. But on this particular matter and how it is interpreted is one of discretion. That's what Arthur Fraser says, and that the recommendations of the Medical Parole Board is just that. But take a listen to his counsel arguing how that discretion is exercised.
The National Commission never overruled the Medical Parole and Advisory Board because the functions of the MPAB or of the Parole Board and that of the National Commissioner are different. In terms of the law, the functions of the MPAB is to make a recommendation to the National Commission. And the decision on whether to grant medical parole or not lies with the National Commission. As a result, if it is the National Commissioner who has the discretion on whether to grant medical parole or not, it cannot be said when the recommendation made to him is positive or negative, then it cannot be said that that decision in exercising of his legislative power amounts to an overruling of the decision.
So did the court hear anything from the former president himself?
Indeed. The former president had two counsel representing him today. He had Dali Mpofu and Tabani Masuku. Dali Mpofu dealing with the merits of the application, which is pretty much what we heard from Arthur Fraser's team, addressing the legality of the decision and whether or not it was permitted to be taken by Arthur Fraser. They, of course, agreed that he was entitled to. But Tabani Masuku took on another aspect in the in limine points that were raised, and this relates to whether or not the parties had standing to make the representations. And it's something we've heard from Zuma so often, the allegation that the parties bringing this application were motivated by political ends. And they were doing this to humiliate former President Jacob Zuma because he is a political opponent. Well, Matajane J pulled him in line a little bit there. He wasn't quite accepting this line of argument because it was rejected by the applicant, saying this is merely conjecture, and they took quite offence to being made. But nevertheless, we've heard another claim by former President Jacob Zuma that there's a political motive.
Well, Barry, we did expect that, apologies, I thought that there'd be another snippet of that part that you would be throwing to, but I think we did expect that. We've been hearing that quite a lot, even with that address that they mentioned he was able to do before going to jail. He mentioned that as well. But thank you very much. Senior reporter Barry Bateman telling us there about the former president and the application to have his parole rescinded.